All right. How's everybody doing today? Hotep. Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. And it is Tuesday, August 20th, 2019. Welcome to a special 400-year edition of the African History Network show. Okay. We're broadcasting right here on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. And I am joined by none other than one of our Grandmaster Scholar Warriors, one of my teachers. You've seen him in Hidden Colors 5, The Art of Black Warfare, 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti. We're joined by none other than Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Hotep, brother, how you doing today?
Hotep, it's certainly a pleasure always to join our people in struggle, and certainly appreciate what you're doing. So
yes.
Anytime you need me, just call and let everybody know we're moving. And
absolutely.
Others would say Black Power, and some would say Hotep.
Yes.
Say Wakanda forever. So we got it covered.
Absolutely, Wakanda forever. And it's interesting that you mentioned Wakanda because as I talked when I called you yesterday, I was saying I was just at the 37th annual African World Festival here in Detroit this past weekend. Yeah. And I was a vendor all 3 days at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. We've had you speak there before. Brother Charles Farrell has brought you
last month for the reparations.
Yeah. Well, in Cobra Conference, you were here for the Cobra Conference in Detroit, and I was doing presentations inside the museum. And one of the things I talked about is that Wakanda is a real word. A lot of people don't know this. We see Wakanda in the Native American Sioux Indian language, the Omaha Ponca language. It means possesses secret powers. So Wakanda is very, very deep. But what I wanted to talk about today, brother, is we know this is August 20th, 1619. This is the 400th year anniversary of those 29 Africans coming into Point Comfort in Virginia. So we're looking at the legacy of slavery in America, 400 years, 1619 to 2019, the African presence before slavery also. So to start out with, Dr. J, for those that may not know, Dr. Leonard Jeffries is the former chair of the Black Studies Department at City College in New York.
After 45 years.
After 45 years, yes.
I was there for 45 years and chair.
Yep.
Most of that time.
Absolutely, 45 years. So just from the outset, we've seen a lot of media coverage. We see the 1619 Project from the New York Times. We've seen a number of stories written surrounding this 400th year commemoration. From the outset, just what are some of your thoughts on reflecting on August 20, 1619 and the media and some of the coverage and articles we've seen written about this? What are some of your thoughts to start out with?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for staying on the case and doing what you do.
Oh, thanks, brother.
And I appreciate that you're still there looking young.
Yeah, just turned 48.
If I'm up to 82, but 48 is a good age. That puts you between my two nephews, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who's I think 48 or 49, and his brother, Dr. Hassan, who's 47. So that puts you in between the Jeffries boys.
Yes.
That's a good place to be.
Yes.
And it's good for us to have this awakening, this new level of awakening that we're referring to as 1620. And for me, it's a part of a larger awakening that's happening all over the African world and has been happening during most of my lifetime. So I describe this, which is happening now, as the result of what I called, and my partners, the elders, Dr. Clark, and others like Dr. Ben, and my associates like Dr. Asa Hilliard, Dr. Wade Nobles, and the younger ones up under us, Dr. Carr and Dr. Abidi at Howard.
Yes.
I refer
Professor James Small, too.
Well, you see him. He's right there with me. He got my back. And so we just talked for several hours this morning to get the world straight. And so we got it straight. But I like to look at things in terms of what I call systems analysis.
Yes.
Linking things up. And the biggest linking has to take place if you want a system, is between economics, your creative potential, and that is complemented by politics, which is your management ability. And then that foundation of economics and politics is crowned by culture. And culture is what you do in a deep way in terms of your values and whatnot, and how you run your life. And so that triangle of economics, politics, and culture, I tell people, if we want to be able to process information and move with power, we had to have a systems analysis. We have to link things up. Otherwise, we get what I call some facts and some misfacts and some wrong analysis, and we get what I call a paralysis of analysis.
Right.
But we want you to have a systems analysis. And so what is happening now is the result not of some happenstance, it's the result of the movement of African peoples through time with power and with dignity and on their road to what I call the Pan-African linkage that we all have to have. So I'm glad that they're taking time out to celebrate 1620, but we have to go deeper than that.
1619. Right.
And, I raised it simply because during this period of time, August, we've got dates like Marcus Garvey's birthday.
August 17th.
August 17th.
Yes.
And then the week before he popped into the world, my grandfather, Jesse Jeffries, was born in 1868, August the 10th. And so this period of time is important for many reasons, and many of the struggles and the victories we've had have occurred during August. You can look at Nat Turner and, and others. So August is an important time for us, but let's not just have these dots, let's connect them. Let's put them in a system frame of reference. And that's what I want to be able to do. And that system frame of reference is centered around what I call a 50-year turning point of history.
Right.
1945 to 1995. Now take your notes out, because I know you all ain't smart enough to have all those knowledge roll past you and just grab it.
I'm taking notes now. I've heard this before. I'm taking notes.
Put that triangle in the picture.
Yeah, I got it.
The triangle. And then a move. That's important because we have to deal with what you call your socialization and your acculturation. So looking at the pyramid, you have your socialization, which is how the values transmitted to you in your foundation. And particularly those values come from the family and the community. So as Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, one of our great, we have to talk about these powerful sisters who've been in this march with us. And it goes back to the most ancient times that the Queen Mothers and the queens were an important part of African culture. That's why I say that cultural component is not dealing with how much money you have or how fast you can shake your booty. It has to do with the deep values of your spirituality and your understanding of the universe and how you can link that up to move with power. So economics, politics, and culture is that frame of reference to look at systems. And then you have to understand systems have various dimensions. For example, your socialization into life, that includes a three-dimensional process, because you have your
This is part of my presentation. I'm telling you, Doc, look, when I teach, I deal with the systems analysis.
I'm going to send you the bill. This is
I talked about this past weekend at the African World Festival. This is how I teach. Values, interests, and principles. Take it away.
That's right. Well, see, that's what we should have fun with this.
Yes.
It should lift us up, this information. It shouldn't take us down. Ooh, we were enslaved peoples. And so we have to change the definition. Whoever controls the information controls your self-respect and your self-development.
Right.
And so we have to. 20 Africans were brought into the Americas at that period of time before the founding of the nation. But they weren't slaves.
Mm-hmm.
They had actually, I think they had been pirated from
Yeah.
another ship that had, they were captive Africans. They
Right.
had been sucked into the process of enslavement yet. So we need to redefine. We're talking about enslavement, and we're talking about Africans who were involved in a negative way, meaning they were a part of the process. But let's take the term slavery. In other words, we have it wrapped around us and in our minds and in our hearts. But in reality, throw that stuff out there. It
Right.
is not a part of it organically should be tied to the European.
Right.
What do you mean tied to the European? Slavery as a term, as a word in the English language, comes from the Slavic peoples.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the Europeans going at their wars, the Catholics of the Western Europe dealing with the Eastern Europeans and Southern Europeans, the Slavic peoples, and they were not Catholic, so they were fair game for the enslavement that the Western Europeans had. So Slavic peoples produced the name Slavs. We need to throw it off. Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Russia. These are the Slavic peoples who were enslaved in hundreds of years of enslavement by the Western European folks. So that's why you need to see the system, not just lock it in on you, slaves, nuh-uh. We were involved in a process that has to be seen systemically.
Right.
And so to get out of this thing of thinking that we're slaves or even accepting the term, we have socialization and acculturation, and that produces your development. Socialization are the values that you get from your beginning that come from your parents and the community, and that's how you become who you are. But as you grow into womanhood, manhood, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you have what we have to call acculturation, how you're going to fit into society. So when you learn who you are as a human and part of this human family as a child, and then you get ready for the deeper learning, how you fit into society, that's a science that Africans developed and gave to the world. That's one of our contributions to the world. And the top off socialization, how you get started, and acculturation, how you fit into society, you have the whole process of you becoming you and developing your mind, body, and spirit. Again, using the 3 points: mind relating to the body and linking that mind, body, and spirit process to spirit. So don't make spirit spookism, make it realism. And don't make materialism spiritual, make it what it is, a deadly disease. And we got to deal with the material thing. We think if we got something materially, we're on our way. But if we're not dealing with it spiritually, we ain't going to go too far. And so Africans have come this far by faith. That's not just what's in your biblical process in your modern. They come this far by faith because they began the march of humankind.
Yes.
And so we have to understand where we're coming from, not processing ourselves in a period of enslavement in the Western world, but we began the march of humankind, and we began that march because we had this enormous faith in the divine order of the universe, and we are a part of it, not a secondary part of it, but the origin of it, not some people who just happen to be hooked into it. We sustained it over periods of devastation and destruction, and we used it again and again to rebuild. And so the concept of Renaissance is part of the African tradition. You go into a period of growth and development, and then there's a period of change, and you get destruction. Africans created that. In fact, the Tekken, that symbol of George Washington, I used to have a tech in here, but I don't see it on my desk.
No, I've got you covered. I got it. It's coming up.
That represents this whole concept of life, death, and reemergence and redevelopment and renaissance.
Right.
So this great moment is part of the last current African Renaissance, which we need at this time because everybody else is moving on their Renaissance principle, copying what we have. You have Europeans trying to create a new rebirth, negative and positive. Some are kind of created around this Trump man, and we don't even need to mention his name anymore. You talk about spirit. You talk about materialism that lacks spirituality. Hey, that's definition. Some people said that there's ooh, yes. Oh my goodness, yes. How do you create these images? And
see, this is part of my presentations.
I know it is, but but see,
it's PowerPoint.
Some African criteria for when you tap into this enormous explosion of information, you give a few of us credit. Now, people are thinking that you pulled all this shit. I mean, you pulled all this knowledge and stuff together and got Egypt of the West. Now, some people would say, even the Egypt term.
Kemet.
Brother Imhotep. Yes.
Kemet of the West. Yeah, Kemet. Yeah.
So we can let the Greeks have Egypt, but the Greeks got their knowledge from the Africans. That's the beautiful thing. As this thing is exploding, so how did you get the consciousness to even create that imagery there?
Well, you're one of my teachers. I've been studying 27 years. You know, this is part of some of my presentations I do.
I know, but see what it is that you forget us. See,
I don't forget you.
I have this information to let others know that Imhotep is growing. He's not stuck trying to make a few dollars here or there.
Right.
A few dollars to go, but he's growing spiritually.
Right.
This is so fantastic because this is the work of our brother Anthony Browder.
Yeah. Oh, I talk about Browder. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Taking the Nile Valley and brought it into Kemet.
Oh, in Egypt on the Potomac. Yeah. Because and from this right here, I reference Egypt on the Potomac and I quote Browder. So I teach people about, you know, I turn people on to Browder also, as well as you and Professor James Small. And
then the Masonic symbol, which is the Washington Monument, even though there is a parallel monument on the other side of the Potomac in Virginia, which is the official Masonic symbol. We have two Tekkens, one where they're actually copying Kemet, the Nile Valley, and the other where they actually put temples on top of temples, columns of pillars on top of pillars. They've actually created their own implementation of the African knowledge, and which people can do. You put the knowledge out there, you can't hide it. And some people take it and they use it. Unfortunately, the European has taken knowledge he's obtained over the millennia, and he's misused it. You know, instead of using it spiritually, he's using it for devilishment. So, but to have my man, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you know, Wakanda pose with on his chest, looking out at Washington, D.C. and saying, not, I have a dream. He's saying, I have a struggle. And that struggle is to find the enormous truth of our people and to go through the various systems of our growth and development and restoration. And so, and he's looking out over all of this Washingtonness, which is built on our Kemetic knowledge. He's looking at the George Washington Monument, which is the largest thing in Washington. By law, nothing can be taller than it.
555 feet tall. Yep, the Washington.
That's right. And then you look out from the monument, and there's a pillar temple, and that's the Lincoln Memorial. And we've given Lincoln credit for the end of enslavement, but in these United States. But let's understand, economically, politically, and culturally what all of that might have been about. That's why we need to understand this 1620 or 1619, 1619, 1620 thing, because people say we need to celebrate this year, 1619,
right.
1620. And
1620 was the Mayflower.
Right.
Right.
And so we need to understand that. But in order to understand that, a lot of our people have put the pen to paper and printed this knowledge. So
Right.
if you don't have a decent library, as you can see on my left hand, are part of the tapes and whatnot that we have in this house. This is the TV room, my TV room. My wife got her set up at the other end of the house. Nothing but books.
Right.
And so this is books and tapes. I'm looking up at Charles Sumner. Charles Sumner. When you talk about enslavement and the end of enslavement, and you want to put a white man in the middle of it, put Charles Sumner. Lincoln was looking for a practical way out of the dilemma he had, but we give him all the credit. Charles Sumner, and a senator fighting for Black folk for Reconstruction. And of course, we never got the Reconstruction. We're in the Reconstruction period of reconstructing ourselves in this 50-year turning point of history. 1945 to 1995 is the Reconstruction period. And look back on the failed Reconstruction. And then you can see why this period is so important. The period of my life. I was born in 1937. I'm still here kicking it. And 82, and I ain't through. I just need another few months or a year, and I'll have my shit. I mean, I have my stuff so together that we can pass it on to the rest of y'all. This is a 10-room house.
Okay.
It's one of those houses built after World War II for executives. Black folks wasn't even supposed to be in here. This was built for white folks. But this 10-room house, every corner of it, even my messed up Jeep in the front of the house ain't got nothing in it. It ain't run for, because I had a little accident, but it ain't got nothing but books. Some sister just called me and said, I'm looking for Dr. Clark's book, Dr. Jeffries. Will you be there Saturday? And she's looking for my mentor, Dr. John Henry Clark, his book on Notes for an African World Revolution, Africans at the Crossroads. And I told her, I said, all those books are gone, but I'll be there with some books on Saturday. That's Dr. Ron Walter's celebration of this period. And he has taken the old Institute of the Black World that Vincent Harding and others developed in the 60s and the 70s, because Vincent was a partner of Dr. King. Yes. And when Dr. King and the others set up SCLC, this Suddenly the Christian movement, Vincent in Atlanta set up the Institute of the Black World. So there would be an activist component to the spiritual component. And through that Institute of the Black World went some great Black folk and some great Black knowledge. In fact, the famous speech that King made going against the Vietnam War, when he came to New York, the person who put that together for him was Dr. Vincent Harding. So when you see Dr. Vincent Harding, and some of you may never heard of him, you have to clock him in.
Right.
Clock him in. He's done work. He did work with Dr. Clark. They even had this knowledge about slavery and whatnot. They had a CBS program, I believe, a morning class, 6 to 8 in the morning. Dr. Vincent Harding, Dr. John Henry Clark, and others was teaching this history. That's all a part of what I'm calling the rebirth and the Renaissance that we are carrying on now to other important levels. So most of you are glad to get a little tape. And Brother Imhotep, one of our great young growing Africans. Now, when you get to be 82, you can look at it that way.
Right.
But Malcolm wish he had gotten to 49. That would have given him another
39
years or so. Or King wished, Mega wish. I mean, so those of you who are the long distant runners, give thanks. I'm one of those long distant runners. Dr. Clark was running up until the end, his late 80s. And Dr. Ben said, I got this special potion spiritually from the Nile. So I'm going to outstrip all of you. Dr. Ben refused to go until he could see that things were moving in the right direction. So he made it past 92, 93, 94. Dr. Ben was trying to hit 100. So,
Right.
but he's a long distance runner. And I hope that I can, fit that pattern too, because some of us are just designed for the 100-yard dash. And so you got to do what you have to do. Malcolm had the 100-yard dash. He ain't had no 70, 80, 90 years to do what his thing. He had a foundation, a socialization for 10 years that was fantastic because he had his mother coming from Grenada with the consciousness of the Caribbean. He had his father coming from here who was a Garveyite. And so Malcolm had this foundation of Pan-Africanism at birth. So his socialization and his culturation was heading in the right direction. But then when the father was killed, and they say by some of these crazy white
the Black Legion.
And so, and then the mother tried to keep the family together, and that got to her. It was too much of a struggle. And so his positive socialization went the other way around. And as he was fitting into society, it was the materialism that took over. So Malcolm had a period of trouble, and it wound up him going inside in the jail. And so, but because he had this foundation, this socialization coming from this Pan-African building block, he was able to go into the jail process having messed with his African socialization. He was messing with women, he was messing with drugs, he was doing, materialism had taken over. At one point, he was called Detroit Red.
Right.
And, if Spike Lee had him, I don't want to see that scene, I don't need the resurrection, but Spike Lee had him after having conked his head, so he had to put it in the toilet to prevent the burning. And that was a little bit too much for me. So I need to take that out of even the conversation. But he went through the African deconstruction, and whiteness, materialism had captured him. But once he got inside, he got a chance to do a renaissance. So we need to study Malcolm's periods, the African foundation and the growing as a young man and the potential, and then taken off that track and then put on the inside. So we have millions of Black people who have gone through that process. And so we need to say, that's not the end. Malcolm lets you know it's not the end. He was able to transform his mind, body, and spirit inside, learning to read deeply and understand. He had plenty of time to understand. And then to have this new wave of knowledge coming through Honorable Elijah Muhammad, through the Nation of Islam, that gave him some more ideas to help cleanse him of this European materialism, this death, this mind death, this spirit death, this body death. And he was able to resurrect himself.
Right.
So it was a special, but he did it in the 10-yard dash that he had. A 10-year period. Maybe Malcolm was about 12 years, and that he was able to do what he needs to do to contribute to this African period of Renaissance I'm talking about. And then here you have King. It seems that King was around for a long time, but no. King had to do his thing was another 15, 16-year period. That's a 10-yard, that's the 100-yard dash.
Yeah, they both assassinated at 39 years old.
That's right. But in their life story is our history of coming from a foundation of greatness and then building on that foundation, but then being knocked down and trampled on. And so you got to take the dream away from King. The man, they don't kill no dreamers. He was moving us mind, body, and spirit into another consciousness. And they said, stop him. They don't put their computers together and say, blah, 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 stop. He's doing it, stop. He's in the street with the sanitation workers, remember, stop.
Right.
And he's even human. The sisters are taking care of him. J. Edgar Hoover and the rest of them was hooked into all of that. Sisters taking care of King at all the levels. They knew he had a lot to do on his plate, so they gave him a period of rest and comfort. King, you can't put him up on no pedestal. He was as real as any of us, and he went through these enormous changes. He had a struggle, and that struggle is a manifestation of the struggle of someone who came directly out of enslavement. And he's one of our great spirits. We really have to dig him. I'm talking about Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, and he came out of enslavement in Maryland.
Yes.
Beat back the people trying to enslave him, and then made his way to freedom. And he just didn't relax and get the materialism, comfort that is out there. He had to go back into enslavement in the sense of helping destroy the slave system. And so we need to read his speeches. Well, he didn't he marry a white woman at the end?
Second wife,
Yes, and she had been his secretary. So he was smart enough to know that the person going to help me put all this stuff down that I know. And so you can't take his long distance run. Frederick Douglass was a long distance runner, and say, I question him because at the end, he was connected to a white person. If we took the white people out of our context, including some of our grandmothers and great-grandmothers and whatnot, and grandfathers, we would be in trouble. But in spite of having that whiteness, we are able to do what is necessary. It doesn't mean that you sell your soul because you've hooked with some white partners here and there. But he left us with the empowering words, and I don't do nothing important unless I raise him up. If there is no struggle, there's no progress.
Exactly.
Those who profess to favor freedom yet deprecate agitation are men, and we can add women, who want the crops without plowing out the ground. They want the rain without the thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, it may be a political one, but it must be a struggle.
Yes.
And why? Because power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, it never will.
Ashe.
And if we go on, how do we add to that? How do we react to that? Power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, it never will. Find out just what any individuals submit to, and you've found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them, and these will continue until they are resisted with either the words or blows or both. The limits of tolerance are prescribed by the endurance of the oppression that we accept. Now that's my little addition on it. If we accept our oppression, it's going to continue.
Absolutely. And this is Bantu Stephen Biko.
Hey,
yeah.
Why you mentioned my man? Yeah, he's right up there. Stephen Biko. Stephen Biko is standing right up there next to Kwame Ture.
Right.
They're at the top of that shelf. And that shelf includes Roots. That shelf includes The Story of the Negro. That shelf includes First Word. And Stephen Biko. Stephen Biko was my man. Yes. But Stephen Biko didn't even have he didn't even get out. He got on the track and he was kicking it and everybody was cheering for him. But before he could even make the turn around heading toward the line, they busted open his head.
Yes. Beaten by South African police,
But that Biko contribution is so enormous. One of my books, a part of my publications includes the crisis in South Africa, and it was then that I met the real struggle in South Africa, Bishop Tutu, and eventually Alan Bosak, who headed the Protestant International Protestant movement coming out of South Africa. But Steve Biko was the Malcolm X of his time. He was inspired by Malcolm X.
Yes. And those that may not know, so Bantu Stephen Biko was one of our great South African freedom fighters. He was portrayed in the movie Cry Freedom. I think it came out in 1987. He was portrayed by Denzel Washington. So people who may have seen that movie years and years ago, That's who we're talking about, Bantu Stephen Biko. And he said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
That's right.
The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So we must take our minds back. And this is why, as Dr. Leonard Jeffries teaches and Professor James Small teach about that pyramid principle, when I showed you the pyramid of Khafre, the foundation is African history and culture, which gives us our VIPs, our values, our interests, and our principles. And it gives us the cultural paradigm that we see reality through. It influences our economic empowerment and our political empowerment also. Go ahead, Dr. Jeffries.
Well, you certainly hit it on the head. I mean, just this one case up here.
Yes.
When I talked about Sumner, there's the book on Sumner.
Mm-hmm.
If I talk about Henry Louis Skip the Truth Gates, there's his book, Henry Louis Skip. If I talk about Alex,
and I got one of his books too. Go ahead.
And slavery, Alex and I was brothers.
Yep.
That's right.
This
so,
the African Americans. I have this book also by Dr. Gates as well. So that's where I got that from. Dr. Henry Louis Skip the Truth Gates. I got that from Dr. Jeffries, because oftentimes Dr. Gates skips over the truth.
Not only does he skip over the truth, he takes on our truth that we fought for and wears it like it was his own. You can't talk about the origin of humankind in the valleys of the Nile and the other great valleys and the Olduvai Gorge, and you try to claim it. That's something that you ran from.
Mm-hmm. You need to answer that, Doc? I can mute your mic. Okay.
No, I know you need a break.
No, I'm cool. I don't need a break.
Oh,
if you need a break, we can take one. I'm cool.
Yeah, no, we into it now.
Yeah, we're into it. I don't need a break. I'm straight. And then just very, very quickly, before you go to the book, just very quickly, everybody just tuning in. Hey, this is Michael Imhotep. Welcome to the African History Network show right here on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. We're speaking with one of our great Grandmaster Scholar Warriors and one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. And we're dealing with, today is August 20th, 2019. We're dealing with the legacy of slavery in America, 400 years, 1619 to 2019, but also the African presence before slavery as well. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Jeffries.
Well, I'm saying that, and as you pointed out, you mentioned Biko, I look up, this is just a part of our collection. There's thousands of books in this house. The best and most comfortable place for me is, and the best lighting is in the bathroom off of the master bedroom. Mm-hmm. And because it has such good lighting, I may spend hours in there after I relieve myself. I'll be W.E.B. Du Bois reading again his great work. W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, these were the long distance runners.
Yeah.
They did it for long, and you got to read their life and their struggles and whatnot. And so that's what I have here. But then there were the folks like Steve Biko, mm-hmm. inspired by Malcolm X, and to have and to have Denzel play our brother Steve. Mm-hmm. That shows how strong Denzel is as a creative genius and artist, bringing forth our truth, because he also played Malcolm X.
Yes.
And so when you talk about Denzel, just don't stop on one movie or you got to see the collectivity of these brothers. And where Denzel was standing on a foundation that comes from people probably in the Deep South like the rest of us, and went through hell to lay a foundation for him to get the platform to be the great achiever that he has been. Make these linkages. That's why the beauty of having this modern technology is, because 5 minutes before we got hooked up, it did not look like it was going to happen, y'all.
Exactly.
Ancestors said it's going to happen. And so I stayed on the case.
Right. And he was on before me. I was calling him back. I said, okay, Doc, we're going to do this by phone because I don't think you're going to be able to get connected. But he said, I'm here waiting on you, man. Come on.
But I didn't know how we were going to take this flow, so it's just flowing. So
it's the ancestors. Yeah.
The young Steve Biko.
Yes.
And then you have his inspiration, Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm. You see Malcolm behind me.
Yes.
Yep. Picture of Malcolm behind me. Yep.
But see, that one is cool, but that ain't.
I got what I could get.
Well, I can't even get the one I got. I got Malcolm in Ghana.
Okay.
wearing an African top.
Right.
And he had just come back from Mecca, and he had been in Cairo with the African leaders. So this is a picture of him in 1964 in Ghana.
Right.
And Alice Wyndham, a beautiful sister, made this picture. And so she, when I went to St. Louis for a speaking engagement, she presented it to me. Now, this is May 64, Malcolm in Ghana. And where the hell was Jeffries May 64? He says he's an old man. So what did he do with all that? Well, 1964, May, he was in Ghana.
Wow. Yes.
He ain't had no time for worrying about meeting no Malcolm X. He had business to take care of. I've been going back and forth to Africa since 61, 2, 3, and 4. I was in charge of all of West Africa and the programs with Operation Crossroads Africa. So May would have been the time for me to connect with Malcolm, but around May the 14th or thereabout, we had death for the first time in the Operation Crossroads Africa programs. They have these projects all over the continent. And so I had to take care of the death of the first death in Crossroads of a Canadian youngster. They bring black and white Canadians and Americans and us black folk. And we had work on these projects. And so I'm in charge of all of West Africa. And so here comes this death. So I can't worry about grabbing Malcolm's garment and giving him a handshake. I had to take care of business, go to Corleybull Hospital and to see whether we could find a place to put the body until we decided what happened. So I have my diary of my movement to Africa in 61, 62, 63, 64. By that time, I had been to Africa about 10 times in 64 when Malcolm was getting to Africa for the first time in terms of, he had been to Mecca earlier, but this,
right.
He extended the Mecca experience, and his daughter and Herb Boyd from Detroit, and you can see one of the books in the back of me is his book on Black Detroit.
Right.
Ilyasha and Herb combined to produce the diary, the journal diary of Malcolm X, and it's fantastic. Well, I began to look at that. I gave Brother Smalls a copy of it. I'm putting together the Jeffries diary.
Okay, good. We need that also. We need that.
And Negro, how can you talk about your diary? Why are you worried about your diary? Well, here's proof in the pudding. Here's passports. You can't go nowhere without no passports. Okay, right. This is one U.S. Jeffries passport. This is another Jeffries passport. This is a third Jeffries passport. This is a fourth Jeffries passport. This is a fifth Jeffries. So all of the, whenever I was anywhere, we got it recorded. Over. Right. I first went to Africa 61, and so you're talking about close to how many years? You got young people can fix it, man. 61 to 2000. That's 40 years, and you had almost another 20 years. You're talking about 60 years or so in the African continent and moving about with power and knowledge and learning and stuff, meeting all these folks. So it gives me great pleasure to be able to let you all know that some of us who you may see on the tape, that ain't us. That's just a moment where we're bringing some satisfaction to you all. Go beyond the tape. Get the Jeffries at Harvard, where I declared it's not about anti-Semitism, it's about anti-Kemetism.
Yes.
And where was I standing? 30 years before, Malcolm had stood in that same spot.
At Harvard.
And the white dean said he was proud to introduce Dr. Jeffries because this is the same spot where he was when he was introducing Malcolm.
Yes.
And so there you see myself on the stage looking all buffed up like I've been working on the weights and stuff. No, I got my biggest bulletproof vest under my coat because we had raised the question of African history and they had tried to knock us down, and we raised it even higher. The more they threw some blows, the more we counterblowed and actually took them to the Supreme Court to get that history put into the classroom. But the great thing is that Malcolm had his 10-year period, 12-year period. He used it to max. He's a warrior. Malcolm is so powerful that when Denzel came out with the Spike Lee movie,
Mm-hmm.
there was a sister. Now, that's
Benita de Silva.
De Silva.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that sister. Look at that smile.
Yes.
That's an African Afro-Brasileiro, a black woman from Brazil. She was the Malcolm X spirit or the Harriet Tubman spirit in Brazil.
Mm.
And I have a picture in the living room. I said there's a lot of houses. There's a lot of women that's in the living room. We do have a living room. And my wife says, a living room and dining room, you have to keep it clean. Even in our apartment in Harlem, my mother said, you got to at least keep the dining room and the living room clean. But of course, I bring books everywhere. There's a picture of me and Benedicia de Silva in Brazil. I met her several times in Brazil. First time in 88 is when I went to Brazil. And I luckily, we had a conference of the Black artists, and I took a brother of the Renaissance period, and his name was Olatunji.
Olatunji. That's a Yoruba word. That's a Yoruba name.
And that's the great drummer, Olatunji,
yes.
who married a woman from here, and her spirit, she's still moving around going to affairs. But he really helped to change things around in Brazil, because I was about to speak, and these white and mulatto Brazilians saw this black man in an African outfit, and he was ready to speak, and they got just nasty and noisy and incorrect. And he started playing the drums, and as soon as he started playing those drums, they know what the drums are. They shut their asses up and was ready to listen to Leonard Jeffries. Olatunji tapped into that African spirit that is a part of Brazil, and this sister did too. We went down in '92, and she was running for the mayor of Rio, and they were describing her as a monkey and other things. And she lost that mayorship, but she didn't lose her spirit. She was trying to get, when we went down again, she was trying to get the Malcolm X film to Brazil. They said they're not going to let the authorities, they said a story of a person struggling like Malcolm X will not be on the screen in Brazil. But she continued to fight till she became eventually the governor of Rio region and one of the great fighters in Brazil. And so this is a personal friend.
Yes.
And just as Malcolm's widow, Dr. Betty, is a personal friend. And I want to talk about powerful sisters carrying the legacy. So I want to do comparison between this Brazilian sister and Dr. Betty. And Dr. Betty was, Shabazz, she was close to Alex Haley. Mm-hmm. And Alex had done the autobiography of Malcolm, and which was a classic work.
Right. And you worked with Alex Haley also.
More than that, brother. That's another story.
Right.
The Malcolm family and Betty is a part of the Jeffries, Rosalind and Leonard Jeffries legacy. And the Professor Small is in the middle of that because he worked with Sister Ella and carried the legacy of Malcolm with her. And the OAU, the Organization of African American Unity, and Muslim Mass Incorporated, and the which were the organizations that Malcolm developed after he came back from Mecca and Cairo. And they had formed, he had seen the power of the OAU, Organization of African Unity, and he realized that our struggle was not just a civil rights struggle limited to America, but we need to extend it out into the larger world. And so he said, we need the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And so this sister here and her resilience, I went up to meet the spirit of Zumbi in the highlands of Brazil. The one year in 1995 when the Brazilians decided that the Afro-Brazilians decided that they were going to make their national day in November the 20th, they were going to make it into much larger than we had been going to previously. You know, the spirit of Zumbi is in Brazil. That was the warrior leader king in Palmares. So when we're talking about slavery, and we're going to start with the North American thing in 1619, before the Mayflower was 1620. In the middle of that period, in the Brazil already had Africans enslaved.
Right.
They got started 1510. And so by that time, Brazilian Africans were revolting. And so in the 1600s, they had a great revolt, and many of them escaped into the mountains, and they built the first republic in the Americas. Not the American Republic, not the Republic of Haiti, not the Republic of Mexico. The first republic was Palmares. Palmares is the Portuguese for palms. So they went into the hills, and tens of thousands of them formed communities. And those communities lasted most of the 1600s. So before we had the incident that got us coming into the North American, the South American thing was alive. The two largest areas that held Africans during this period of enslavement, the last 400 years or so, was Brazil in the Southern Hemisphere, South America, and the USA in the Northern Sphere. And in between, you had every island of the Caribbean, including Cuba and Santo Domingo and Guadeloupe and Martinique, and all of them was enslaved Africans. And the northern fringe of South America, you had the Guyanas, British Guyana, Dutch Guyana, which was Suriname, and the French Guyana, which is all those areas I've been. The French Guyana is where you have Devil's Island off of the coast, and Guyana they call it. So when you talk about moving with power and your eyes open onto the African world, this brother has been blessed. And fortunately, much of the time I've had my partner for life by my side, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. We've been hooked up, heading for 55 years.
Wow.
The same couple. And she's writing her story and the other part of the house at her computer. And I'm back here trying to put mine together. But I said, it's so much there. I said, brother, people ain't going to believe you that you hooked up with a Benedicta de Souza, not just one time, but several times.
Yes.
In fact, you went into the mountains with her. And who else did you go with? We wasn't going to go by ourselves. We went with the president of Brazil, and then on the white side. But we also went with the president of Brazil on the black side. He was the minister of culture and sports. His name was Pelé.
Pelé, yeah.
So we went up into the mountains with Benedicta, the most powerful black woman in Brazil. Pelé, the greatest soccer player in history.
Mm-hmm.
And the president of Brazil. And we was happy to be up there. I was happy, but I had miscalculated, didn't do all my research. The regular people who go up to the mountains to celebrate the spirit of Zumbi, they were not there. They had just a small segment. They had decided that for the first time, Black people would march to the capital of Brazil, Brasilia. And so they were in Brasilia. So some of us were on the mountain doing the regular Zumbi celebration. But if I had my brothers, I would have taken a helicopter to join Black people walk for days and weeks to have 100,000 of them in the capital of Brazil for the first time, declaring that Brazil has a problem with racism and the oppression of people of color. So that's a part of the Renaissance, the rebirth, that we need to talk about. And so when I write about this sister, I'm going to put her with Betty, Dr. Betty Shabazz, and then next to Dr. Betty Shabazz is going to be somebody called Winnie Mandela.
Yes.
So all three of these ladies are part of my experience, and it's good, brothers, to get some powerful ladies.
Absolutely. To bring some balance too.
Yes, right. When I put this Brazilian great with the great Betty Chavez and with who was the third one I had?
Winnie Mandela.
Yes, I have a picture of me and Winnie together, but unfortunately it was with a Negro who had done some treacherous stuff. And so I've never done this before, but I took that picture with the three of us and I had to cut his butt out of it. He was so treacherous. And so it's just me and Winnie, but Winnie came several times. I've been with her when she came many times. And also I've been to her house in South Africa, her compound where she was living and whatnot. So you have to talk about family. That's what this thing is. The
right.
African family. Well, I come from Jamaica, but where in Jamaica? Are you talking about South Jamaica in New York, over there where the airport is? Or are you talking about the island of Jamaica? I come from Trinidad. I said, well, be clear. What part of the Trinidad? It's a twin island republic. Are you from Trinidad or are you from Tobago? Are you a Tobagonian? Here we are on these little islands, Africans, speaking the European language and absorbing his culture and dividing ourselves up.
Yes. Yes.
And so we got a problem, y'all.
We're all African people.
The second great island, the greatest one is Cuba, of course. And they got problems because the light Cubans think they have another world that don't have the African large component. But then right next to Cuba, you have this fantastic island called Santo Domingo.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you got an island split between the Dominican Republic and Haiti.
Right, right.
So we have to understand how slavery and racism got into that.
Right. Well,
reconcile it and bring it together. Dr. Wade Nobles has produced a book, My Body, and it's called The Island of Mimes. Island of Mimes, I guess it is, M-E-M-E-S. The Unfinished Revolution in Haiti. And he goes through Dessalines, but before Dessalines, he goes through Toussaint. Before Toussaint, he goes through the sister Fatima, Cecile Fatima. And before the Cecile Fatima, he goes to Jamaica where Duddy Boukman came, the Obia man, came with the African spirituality and brought it into Haiti. So you had a mix of what he brought from Jamaica with what was in Haiti. The Haitian Revolution needs to be seen in terms of not just a material victory for the Haitian peoples, but a spiritual coming together of African forces that put this revolution on the map that scared the Europeans. To this day, Haiti is paying a price for having freed themselves. And in freeing themselves, they had to take some harsh measures because Haiti was such a rich part of the French Empire. It was the richest part of the French Empire, and they would do anything to keep it. And for the Haitians to have broke away and established a free republic. So that's why this slavery story ain't gonna be nice. Some little ship coming floating into the Americas, and then we had the Jamestown and the Grove. No, we have to put all of it in. We got to put the struggle against enslavement, the revolts. You can't have no Harriet Tubman just thinking the kids, thinking they're going on the Underground Railroad. It was underground, yes, but it was Harriet moving through the night, studying the stars and seeing what side had the moss on the trees as she went back again and again and again after freeing herself. That's all she needed to do. But this African spirituality said, you got to go back and get as many of your people out as possible. And she didn't go alone. She had wrapped up in her apron a nice weaponry which would have helped her. And things got difficult. And she said, I could have freed 1,000 more if they had only realized that they were captives and enslaved Africans. But as she pulled you out of enslavement, she wasn't waiting for a conductor to come along and pull the train. No, this was a movement on foot. through the
Right.
swamps. And when people got tired or people wanted to go back and they were afraid, then she just took the weaponry out, the equalizer, the inspirationer, and
Right.
said, brother, it's either freedom or death.
Yep.
We can't leave you here because you may expose the rest of us that is moving toward freedom. So Harriet was ready to take a life to give life to our people. We don't need to see her just going back and forth. And she freeing herself was enough. That stands as a great victory. But having the spiritual understanding of the universe, that you have the power to go back into slavery again and again, each time risking your life. She survived all of that. There's a house they eventually moved up into Auburn, New York, in New York State. And she lived after say she was a long distance runner, just like Douglas was a long distance runner, Dr. Ben a long distance runner, and Dr. Jeffries hopes that he's up there with Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben as a long distance runner. But no matter if I drop dead now, the victory of our people coming out of the devastation that we've been put in has been so magnificent that I'm ready to go at any time. But if they give me a little bit more time, we're going to hook it up. We're going to hook it up.
Exactly. Let me do this quickly. Just three quick
Don't you have some recognition on who you are, or do people know who you are?
Yeah, I did that a couple of times. But a few quick announcements
commercial
here.
breaks. See,
Yeah.
when you have a commercial break, when you get my age, you can go slip into the bathroom and relieve yourself. But
Right.
I'm cool. This has been
Okay, yeah. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes here. Number one, everybody, I'm doing 4 interviews today. So we have Dr. Leonard Jeffries first. Approximately 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, we have Professor James Small. And then about 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Professor Kabahai Wafa Kamene. And then about 8 p.m., we have Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. So the theme today, because this is August 20th, 1619, the 400th year anniversary of that, it was actually an English pirate ship, the White Lion. The White Lion and the Treasurer come into Point Comfort in Virginia, and those 29 Africans are exchanged for food and supplies. Now, African people have been in this land for tens of thousands of years, and this is one of the things we will talk about throughout the day as well. So our history in this country does not start in 1619. So I want to let you know those other interviews are coming up here at the our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. I'm Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show, founder of the African History Network. Also, I will be in Brooklyn, New York this weekend, August 23rd at Sisters Place and August 24th at the Makata Museum as part of the Black Agenda Tour with Michi X, Jice Johnson, Jade Arendelle. Visit our website.
Give me that again. In New York Place, I was just there a couple of weeks ago.
Makata Museum?
Yes.
Where
is that located?
The address is on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And it's also at the Black Agenda on tour.com. I could look it up, the address. But I'll be there this weekend. So everybody check that out. Come on out for that. Details are on the website. And also, let's see okay. And when earlier on, Doc, when you talked about the 29 Africans in August 2016, 19. Just so people know, so it was originally a Portuguese slave ship, the San Juan Batista, that captured about 350 Africans in Angola. And around the Gulf of Mexico, they were hijacked by English pirates.
Right.
And about 50 Africans were taken, put on 2 ships, the White Lion and the Treasurer. And the White Lion and Treasurer come into Point Comfort in Virginia. And 29 Africans are traded that are on the White Lion slave ship. Now, the interesting thing is, Doc, and then you can go on with this, and I want to tie Haiti into this a little bit as well. The interesting thing is in 1619, codified slave laws don't exist in the what are the 13 British colonies. Codified slave laws don't exist at that point. The first colony to have codified slave laws would be Massachusetts in 1641. We see it in Virginia in 1661, and Lerone Bennett Jr. also breaks that down in Before the Mayflower as well. So we see this, the way this evolves, this history really evolves in this country is different than how we think it evolves. And this is why it's so important to study this history and study this chronology of history as well. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, you certainly, I don't know where you get the nerve to be putting something like that together. I mean, and you got to get a larger audience. I mean, to be able to put Jeffries and Small, I mean, what we've been through is an unbelievable experience in terms of the struggle for our people.
Yeah.
And then to hook up with Booker T. Coleman,
yeah,
who has changed his name and identified with his Native American and African heritage, and it's fantastic. And he's part of the Jeffries story because I'm putting my story together. He was he taught in the middle school in the Bronx, and his class was a happening, and so he's a part of the early people trying to put together a curriculum in the public school system, and so he's just an extraordinary brother. So the people, who was the last person you said?
Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence.
That's right. So y'all got too much. How aren't you charging them for something like? Don't they have to pay something? They got to send you.
No, it's free. Just tune in.
No, you can't give no Negroes nothing for free. You got to charge them at least $500 for these sessions. To get all 4 or 5 of us.
Well, we're commemorating 400 years, so we got one person for each 100 years.
and then next week you're gonna put the sisters up there. So then you're gonna get this one and that sister.
Yeah. Then I got to do one with some sisters. I'm in Brooklyn this weekend, so then I got to do some. I got to bring in Dr. Claude Anderson maybe next week, and then interview some sisters also. Yeah.
Claude and I have been together many times. He's
one of my teachers also.
In Washington, yeah, he had done. Well, he tried to go up against it all in Detroit, and
they sold them out. Some of the city council members here in Detroit sold them out. Some of them supported him, Joanne Watson and Kwame Kenyatta, but some of the city council members here in Detroit sold them out. Yes.
And that's what our people do. They go for the buck. The real deal. But I have to congratulate you for even attempting to pull us together like that. And
no problem. No problem. Let me say this very quickly. So August 21st is the anniversary. So we see the anniversary of the Nat Turner Rebellion starting August 21st.
Yes.
And that night of August 21st into August 22nd, we see the anniversary of the Haitian Revolution as well. Okay, now you're in the documentary 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti. And when we look at this history here, we see that because of the Haitian Revolution, Toussaint Louverture, Boukman Dada, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, because they beat the hell out of the French so badly, and they also defeat the Spanish and the British, but because they beat the French so badly, this causes France to sell the land that was here, okay? And this is the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. The U.S. gets about 828,000 square miles of land for less than 3 cents an acre. It's about 15 million.
Largest land transfer for nothing in the history of the world is a result of the black men willing to brûler car, couper tête, in other words, burn down the plantations and cut off the heads of the slave masters.
Right.
I mean, that's why Haiti is paying for its price. Haiti, you can feel it. When we go up into the mountains and we go up there and you see what they built, how could they build these fortresses in the sky and the foundries to produce the weapons? And you're on a mountain range in this enormous building and you look across the mountains and there's another fortress in the sky. The Haitian Revolution is one of the glorious moments in the history of the world, white, black, Asian, Arab, or whatnot. And so it needs to be studied.
Yes.
How it reverberated around the world. And when we talk about reparations, which is a part of the picture, Haiti was tied down with indemnities. It was the richest part of the French colonial empire.
Right.
And they tied it down with indemnities. And they had to pay these. That's paying France for the destruction of over 1,000 plantations and for the death of over 1,000 plantation owners who were lucky that they went quick and they didn't get the torturing that the Europeans do when they try to, leave you a message. But this history is so fantastic, and I'm so glad that you're able to But see, our folks ain't gonna be able to handle this. Once they get one little something, they're gonna let you go back to look at some of those what you get on the internet. So for you to have taken this tool and this history and bring it forth like this, it's just magnificent. Lerone Bennett's book, but when you raise something like Lerone Bennett's book, you talk about a school of knowledge.
Right. Before the Mayflower. This is excellent. And definitely read chapter 2. Chapter 2 is so deep because, he talks about that, about a 30-year period of time in history from 1619 on, where you have documented cases of Africans coming to this country, a lot of them coming from England, people of African descent, going into indentured servitude, coming out, acquiring land, and then also acquiring indentured servants, white and black.
Yes.
See, the way this history evolves is not the way we think it happened. That's why it's so important to study the real history. And the other thing I talk about, Dr. Jeffries, is that if we're ever going to get any type of reparations, America needs a massive history lesson because Americans are woefully ignorant of history, white Americans and African Americans. We don't understand this history.
And so that's why we have to be cool about raising it and understand that it's going to be difficult to put that the first person on the reparations list should be the greatest of Americans. I call him TJ. He's my favorite. When I teach my class, everybody knows about TJ. Now, you know about LJ, that's Leonard Jeffries. TJ is the key person in the American white structure. That's Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson, who signed the Louisiana Purchase. He was the president during the time of the Louisiana Purchase, 1803.
The greatest of the American exemplars, meaning example of achievement. But he was a contradiction from his mind, through his eyes, through his mouth, through his heart, down through his private parts.
Right.
You need to see his contradiction as an example of, if he, the greatest of the American, the most accomplished, the Renaissance of the American, if he can be so involved with enslavement that he not only had one plantation, I think he had a total of 4, he had more than 600 Africans enslaved. And
Monticello was the main one. Yeah.
Right. And then you had Sally Hemings, which was a part of a slave girl who was a part of his family structure because she came from his white wife's side, and his white wife's father was a part of Sally Hemings. I mean, it's we need to tell the truth. So when you see the Lerone Bennett, the Dr. Ben, the Dr. Clark, the Dr. Len, you're talking about schools of knowledge. Just don't focus on one book. But Before the Mayflower is important. I started teaching in 1969 at the City College, the first Black course in the political science department. And my course outline included Lerone Bennett, the Before the Mayflower. But eventually, Lerone came out with a book called The Shaping of Black America. He not only deals with the historical facts, he deals with the concepts and the analysis. And so he has the first to arrive. He has the red and the black, the relationship between the African, and he has this whole indentured, which we don't, as our brother was trying to explain, that an institutionalization of enslavement grew over a period of time.
Right.
White folks came, some of them came with indentures. So the beginning of the domination, Black people had indentures. In fact, there's one guy, Anthony Johnson, he had 550 acres of land and whatnot, and had some indentures, white and black.
Right.
So we got to get, but LeBron Rose, he has The Crisis of Black America. He has so many books. His School of Knowledge is what we need to do. Dr. Clark is not just a book or two or a tape. It's a school of knowledge. Study his life. Study the life of my young brother here. The changes and the transformations he's gone through. The key is transformation. You can't, well, I heard Dr. Jeffries and he didn't sound too cool to me. He was talking about white folks and this and that. But you can't stop at a speech. You got to go to the Harvard speech. You got to go to the Howard speech, the Holocaust speech. You have to go through at least 10 of my speeches to even get a taste. And then you have to go through the fact he was with Kwame Ture, who, along with this brother, who was Stokely Carmichael in the day, coming from Trinidad and Tobago family, but raised in New York. And when he passed, he was a citizen of Guinea. Well, I have pictures of me and Kwame Ture in Guinea. I have pictures of me and his wife in Guinea. Miriam Makeba in the mountains of Guinea and the Futajalan. Well, why was Dr. Jeffries, why were you up there? I was up there before Kwame. I went in 1963 to lead the Crossroads group in the mountains of Guinea in Mamou, and then went back in 65 and went there with a group in 70. So when we're talking about this relationship of the struggle, you got to look at the life of this brother. And finally, he was suffering from cancer. So one of my staff members, Jerry Price, gave him her apartment in New York on Convent Avenue, right near where we have Clark House. And whenever he got to New York, and with his friend, Dr. Michael Thurwell, they finished this book, Ready for the Revolution. So these books are part of what you need. But I can't read, Dr. Jeffries. I'd rather look at something. Well, find the historical things to look at. Don't be looking at. I turn my phone on, my cell phone, and I'm flipping and stuff, and there's a behind sticking in my face. I said, well, damn, I said, a big black behind. I said, wait a minute. Well, you shouldn't be able to turn it on and just have something like this happen. But look for the correct things, the uplifting things, the empowering things, because it's a question of empowerment. But I can't leave. Oh, my wife and I participating in all of these activities. This was a conference in the Gambia on reparations. So we have to put the reparations debt on the table, what they owe us, but we owe ourselves reparations. If we used our wealth and our potential, we could build a new world for African peoples. And we're in the strategic parts of the world, Brazil and South America, the northern part of South America, the Isles of the Caribbean, and we're here in America. And then we got the whole African continent. So we have to be about the Renaissance. The Renaissance that we're in now is symbolized by this imagery. And I will try to wind up with this.
Okay.
That this is in Senegal. And in this 1619 process that we're talking about, people are going to go to Senegal, they're going to go to Gorée, which was a slave entrepreneur. That's where several companies of enslavement people, enslaving companies were, and you had the door of no return there. And so you cry because you realize what happened. You go to Ghana, they have 60 forts and dungeons, and 4 of them are still available for you to go in. And the 2 great ones, Elmina, where slavery institutionalized started in 1482, and then you have with the Portuguese, and eventually the Dutch in 1637 took over the Portuguese control of Elmina, and then the British wanted to be a part of this enslaving operation, so they took over from the Swedes that had established a fort, castle, so-called dungeon at Cape Coast. So that's where Brother Small and I have our hotel complex that we're working on now. And so we're in the ground in Ghana. But the Senegal president, pushed on by leaders of the OAU, the African Unity Organization, they had said, we need a modern example, not just of the past, but of the future. So I'm leaving all of this that we're talking about is in reference to the 50-year turning point of history, 1945 to 1995. And my brother will have to have me back on to deal with that.
Absolutely, I will.
Meeting in 1945 at the Manchester Conference. Who was there? W.E.B. Du Bois, our great mind. Who was there? Kwame Nkrumah as the secretary. And so you had Nkrumah and Du Bois. Who was there? Padmore of Trinidad Tobago. Who was there? Ross McConnell of Guyana. Who was there? My buddy, Professor Edward Scobie in RAF uniform. Who was there? Dudley Thompson was there in RAF uniform, another one of my partners. And here is Dudley Thompson in a book that Tony Martin, our great brother, put together, from Kingston to Kenya. And there's Dudley Thompson with Jomo Kenyatta. He was the lawyer who helped to save Kenyatta and the Mau Mau. And then I most recently got a book from our bookstore, The Source of Knowledge in Newark, which has a picture of Jomo Kenyatta on the cover with Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall had a great deal. My motto, I wanted to be a lawyer back in the day.
Right. You wanted to be like Thurgood Marshall and save the race.
And to save the race. But Thurgood, when I was in Europe in 1959-60, Thurgood was there in 60 also, meeting with the Kenyans and the British government trying to prepare for independence for Kenya. And 3 years later, in 63, Kenya had its independence. So I have a book with Jomo Kenyatta and Thurgood Marshall on the cover. So these connections are very real, brothers and sisters, and we need to plug into them. You'll be able to grow and develop and have that systems analysis and that consciousness. But this is my last statement to you about what we've been doing. I went to Senegal first when I was dealing with the Crossroads Africa program.
Mm-hmm.
I was the leader of the group, or I became the leader of the group in 1961 in the Ivory Coast. And then I was the unofficial leader because this little white man just couldn't handle himself. And so the U.S. Embassy suggested that I take over. But this was my first experience in Africa. I had a beautiful experience with Africa in 59-60 when I met Cheikh Anta Diop and Alioune Diop and the others in Paris. That's when I got my first serious awakening in reference to Africa. But I led the group extensively in the Ivory Coast. I led the group for real in Senegal in 62. And then at that time I was at Columbia and I did my master's in economic development in Senegal. Then I led the group to Guinea in 63. And then I got into the PhD program at Columbia. And so I eventually did my PhD on economic development in the Ivory Coast. It's been a fantastic journey. But one of the great moments was when the president of Senegal put this beautiful statue together. It's the Renaissance period, 1945 to 1995.
Right.
And it's an example of the rise of the black man. There is the black man rising. Look at that powerful black man. God knows the black man needs to rise, need to get off his knees, shooting crap, off his knees.
Drinking and doing drugs.
Doing drugs.
Right.
And so he is the black man rising, but he can't rise by himself. He is leaning on his rock, the black woman.
Right. Get off his knees from kissing white people's behinds too. The PWAKs, professional white ass kisses.
So this is a statement to the world that we moving away from that. And
right.
All the African leaders have proved it. And the black man is not playing with himself. He's not playing with somebody else, but he is holding his child up to the heavens and to the future. And that child is not pointing to the north where we usually look for sustenance, the European world. He's not pointing east to the new boy on the block, the Asians. He's not pointing southeast to Mecca, not even pointing south to the rest of the continent. The child is pointing across the Atlantic Ocean to the New World African. It is the link between the New World African and the African continent that's going to be a meaningful future. And it's not going to be just a hero of man worship, a hero of struggle. It's going to be the family. The family's got to rise.
Right.
And so you can go inside this simulated explosion, and there is the history. You can take an elevator 15 stories up into the mind of the black man, into his head, and look out on the world. But more important, at the base is the history that Cheikh Anta Diop's son, Mbaki, and his wife put together of Cheikh Anta Diop's great work. You see from the beginning of humankind, the African, his movement through life and this, laying the foundations for civilization in Egypt and other places, in Nubia, and then the new nations. So our story is in this. So when you go to Senegal, just don't go to Gorée and get the tears done. You've got to go to the future. So this speaks volumes for us. This Renaissance monument speaks to where we need to go. And that's where we're going. These activities that we're about is all a part of that.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you for allowing me to.
No problem, brother. No problem. I was very quickly here as you were talking, I was grabbing certain books. So I just grabbed this one. You just mentioned Dr. Shank got the jolt. So yeah, The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. We talked about Tony Browder earlier. We've got Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, Egypt on the Potomac. Okay, so people write down the names of these books. Check out these. Go to your, African American bookstore.
That's right.
Get these scholars. You mentioned
how Europe underdeveloped it. No, from Columbus to Castro. And Eric Williams became the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, but he was a part of that African group that was influenced by European. His great European teachers helped to put the knowledge of Marxism and whatnot in the world. But this is a book, Capitalism and Slavery. This is a monumental work. In other words,
Eric Williams.
You've got to understand that capitalism didn't come because we were inferior peoples or we needed to be enslaved. Capitalism was the reason. There's new economics, and you needed this labor process. White folks were willing to put their own people in enslavement, but they realized they couldn't endure the great work that came from this agricultural enslavement. So, but Eric Williams has another book. This was his PhD dissertation, but it's fundamental, linking capitalism and slavery together. But how from Columbus to Castro is his second great volume. And that gives who was involved in enslavement, who were the various peoples, including some wealthy Jewish folk. But I'm looking up in my bookcase, and there's the Dutch involvement in slavery. There's the English involvement in slavery. All these, it was the biggest economic opportunity in the history of the world, and everybody tried to be involved in it. We have to understand our involvement should help us school ourselves about working with the family and not getting caught up in the European distraction and attractions into materialism. But Walter Rodney, his younger partner from South America, Guyana, he produced a great book, Slavery in the Upper Guinea Coast. That was his PhD. But then he wrote a book for us, for the ordinary folks, meaning the larger public. And that was from his dissertation was Slavery in the Upper Guinea Coast. And then his great work for us, for you, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa.
Right, Dr. Walter Rodney. That's in the other stack. Yeah, I got like 4 stacks of books here, man. 4 or 5 stacks. Yeah, that's in the other stack.
You gotta link these brothers together. And then when you deal with our brothers' souls of Black folks, I haven't listened so long. I read it the other day.
That's in the bedroom. Yep. On the bookshelves in the bedroom.
But then he didn't stop with Soul of Black folks. He has a whole school of knowledge, including this one, which is The World and Africa.
Right.
One of Dr. Du Bois's great work. But so it's fun, brothers and sisters. You don't have to get scared about these books, but put them in your knowledge bank so that you can work with them. This is the one that I want to leave you all with.
Okay.
Now, books like this, like Amos Wilson's Blueprint for Black Power, I used to tell my students, you need the book, but don't be afraid of it. In fact, carry it around because it might be helpful for you, especially you sisters. And if you're on the subway and you're trying to read your book, Amos Wilson, and here's somebody looking at you like they shouldn't be looking at you, and if they even thought to reach, you just close the book up and then strike a blow for African power and African women. But this is the type of history that I'm glad I've been able to bump into. Israel on the Potomac, The Southern Experiment in Black Freedom, written by a white fellow, Mel Bly. And there's one of the early Africans. This is about the cousin of Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
And the cousin of Thomas Jefferson called himself Citizen. He was more empowered by the French Revolution than by the American Revolution. And then he decided that what he would do is free the enslaved Africans. He inherited enslaved Africans from his father, but he decided that he would free them. And he realized that and the instruction to his wife was when she passed, that these Africans should be freed. And the beautiful thing was, he said that if they are free, they need land. How can they function free without land?
Right.
And so he, in his will, donated 400 acres of land for the freed Africans. And this land was near where my mother's family comes from, Farmville, Virginia. And in fact, Du Bois did a study on Farmville, Virginia, and then he has a part of it is the study of Israel on the Potomac. They named this little community Israel. And so the remnants of it, I'm going back in a month or two with my nephew, Dr. Hassan, hopefully, and
Yeah.
we can go through this free town. The cousin of Jefferson was trying to show that if anybody's going to function as a free person in America, they need land.
Exactly.
And he actually gave it. So these are the type of things we need to put on the table. But the most important thing for us, put the demand, because America owes us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But if you don't get anything, or like King said, you get a check that bounced, you have the ability, where you've been situated, to put internal reparations in place. Mm-hmm. And linking it with the various rich places that African peoples are in South America, the Caribbean, and on the continent. And so we can put a 10-year plan in place for Africans that would lead us into a 100-year Renaissance period.
Absolutely. Last two books, because I got a bunch of them here. Martin Malcolm in America, A Dream or a Nightmare by James H. Cone. Okay. And James H. Cone he talks about how toward the end of both of their lives, their ideologies were converging. And he shows you passages from them because, and you know, Martin and Dr. King, they did not hate each other. There was a mutual respect between the two brothers, you know. And then also Christopher Columbus and African Holocaust, Slavery and the Rise of European Capitalism, Dr. John Henry Clark.
Hey, you can't just leave it hanging there like that. There's an intro by Dr. Leonard Jeffries.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right also. Yeah, introduction by Dr. Leonard Jeffries in here as well.
He ordered me because he said, you got to put in that 200-year period, 1600 to 1800, when slavery was established. And we always had a conflict, a friendly conflict. I'm a political scientist, so 50-year turning point of history is important. Mm-hmm. But Dr. Clark is a historian. So he said, no, we need look at a larger period. So in that intro, I talk about the 50-year turning point of history, and I reference the 200-year period that he ordered me to write about, 1618 to 1600 to 1800. So, I mean, it's all fantastic. It's all great. It's all been a great and marvelous. There's a book by a tape by Wesley Snipes, The Great and Mighty War, about Dr. Clark's life.
Exactly, by Dr. Clark's life.
Comes out of Alabama, Georgia, sharecropping. And he did walk through life. In fact, he did a lot of walking. He eventually was a hobo and got on the train and came to New York. And he has an enormous story. He didn't have the PhD and the DDDs and the BBDs and all that mess that we were able to get. He comes straight out of book learning. His three geniuses in his life, three powers in his life, was his grandmother, his mother, and his fifth grade school teacher, Eveline Taylor, who saw the genius in him as a young boy and nurtured it. So he says, I have three deities. And he's not talking about the biblical deities that we all got from the Judeo-Christian Islamic heritage. He's talking about the hands-on, the love that allowed him to develop this sense of mission, purpose, and direction. So 20,000 or so of his books were moved out of New York and sent down to the Woodruff Library in Atlanta to service that complex of Morehouse and Spelman and Morris Brown and Atlanta University and the Theological Seminary. So it is a great and mighty walk, y'all. You can walk with your head down because you got to watch what you're stepping on, but you need to walk with your chest out and your head up. And then you need to start making sure you put something in that head. Systems analysis, all of this information. Just don't satisfy yourself on looking at some little thing on TV to give you a break, but get into the serious stuff as well as the relaxing. And you'll see, as Malcolm said, if we do not struggle, well, we will not. He understood that more than anybody else. And he was ready to give his life in struggle. And so we had picked up that tradition of his. His daughters, they call me Uncle Lenny. Malat, who didn't meet her father, she did meet him. When Malcolm was removed from us and they blew him away at the podium in the Audubon Ballroom.
Right.
Betty was sitting in front with her daughters, two of whom were in her womb. And as she cradled Malcolm's head, it was up against her belly, and the twin babies were there. And one of them, Malat, she went on the Operation Crossroads Africa. She just came back from Ghana. She sent me a message. I want to be a part of your Facebook page. But right. Brother Small and I have taken on a mission to relate to the girls as African uncles. And so Malcolm and Betty and the children, King and Coretta, and the children. And so I have a special relationship with Betty in terms of helping Alex help her with Roots and the autobiography. A special relationship with Coretta and Martin, because my birthday is January 19th, 1937. Martin was January the 15th. Right. So he had roots in Georgia, and my father's roots in Georgia. In fact, my grandfather was murdered by the Klan after he was born in 1868 at the birth of the 14th Amendment. His brother Sam was born at the birth of the 13th Amendment, which freed us. And my grandmother was born half a mulatto. She was born in 1870. So the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment are part of our history. And right. My grandmother and grandfather had 13 kids. My father was the last of them. And they were raising 7 kids of her sisters on their farm. Black people knew how to take care of each other.
Right.
And so that he was murdered by the Klan in 1917, not because he was looking at a white woman or he was desiring something white. No, he was a leader of that community. Mm-hmm. He was I saw the tomb, his tombstone, my life still. You opened it up with the picture of the monument in Senegal and in Kemet, and also with the Washington Monument. But my grandfather, when I finally met him in the graveyard in Georgia at night, having been told by the spirit of our ancestors to step away from Alex Haley, I went down to help him with the filming of Roots. And finally, the white folks said they were tired of me making corrections. And Alex said, let's talk to the experts. So they had me. And I told them, this, you got to change that. So they sat me down, Margolis, the head of Roots, and Green, the Englishman who came to handle the African part. And they said, Dr. Jeffries, we're glad you're here. But we want you to know that we bought the rights to the book Roots, and we're under no obligation to maintain the integrity of the book, and we certainly don't have to deal with the truth of African history. Now, this is not the Ku Klux Klan,
right,
or rabid racists. These are intelligent, gifted white people who could just look you in the face over lunch. I wanted to throw up. I couldn't believe it.
So you were making historical corrections to the miniseries Roots.
That's right. Right, to the miniseries Roots. I was brought there by Alex because I had helped him when I met him in '69 at San Jose, when I set up the San Jose Black Studies Department, the first, one of the first of its kinds on the West Coast. And in my classes was somebody called John Carlos, who I had met at the Olympics the year before. 1968, yeah. 68. And coming in as a visiting scholar was Dick Gregory. Mm-hmm. So I met him and we became buddies. And eventually he asked us to take his oldest children, Lynn and Michelle, 8 and 11, to Africa. And we took them on a moving class, a class that traveled across America to study the urban crisis. And then we went to Africa to visit several of the Africans. Dick Gregory's 8 and 11-year-olds got to Africa before him. But another person I met at the same period of time was Alex Haley. He needed help in this plan he had. And eventually he came back to me a year or so later and said, "Can you do anything?" And I said, "Yes." And so he had feelers from Carnegie Corporation to help him with the roots work. But he was an individual. He had nothing. There was no fiduciary responsibility. You can't give money just to an individual who doesn't. So I told him, we'll work it out. So we planned a grant from a proposal from the San Jose Foundation. We submitted it to Carnegie, and the San Jose Foundation handled a $500,000 grant to help Alex Haley complete the book Roots. And for 7 years, I was his #1 partner, closer to him than his own brothers. Got all that documentation. And then after the book was so successful, they said, let's go and do the film.
Right, miniseries.
He didn't make any money out of the book because he signed a ridiculous contract. He did make some money out of the movie film because he was smarter by that time. But he did so much that he died poor. He died a couple $1 million poor. We won't discuss that. Because Alex was a giver. He wasn't a manipulator in terms of the money scene. But what happened was, after having this devastation of the white folks saying, we bought your history, but I still stayed with Alex because I don't give up on my friends. I still stayed with him even though I was hurting with that knowledge. But finally, Spirit, after we had a scene in the Brunswick, Georgia, of a cutaway of a slave ship, and Lou Gossett and myself and all of us black men were standing there in tears to see the scene where O.J. Simpleton or Simpson, whatever you want, he was the master of the youth, and he was in the upper deck. And then you had Kunta Kinte on the lower deck, and he was moaning and groaning. And O.J.'s role was to say, Kunta Kinte, be strong. You got to eat. Be strong, because we have to fight and kill white folks and return to Mother Africa. Now, we was in tears. I remember Lou Gossett and myself looking at it. This is a fantastic scene, but Green ran out and said, cut. And we said, well, why are you going to cut? You were supposed to go with the flow if the scene was good.
Right.
He said, we do not want in this scene return to Mother Africa.
He didn't want them to say that. He didn't want them to say return to Mother Africa.
Folks, good white folks, keeping us from Mother Africa. He instinctively ran out there. And this is in the 70s. Mm-hmm. I've been to Africa 30 times by then, all over Africa. And so return to Mother Africa would have been the normal cry of Africans coming from different parts. That would have been their common cry, return to Mother Africa. So I said, I have to get out of here. But I didn't abandon my buddy. I stayed in until Spirit said, get your black ass out of there and go to your grandfather's grave.
Wow. So for people who, we're wrapping up right now. And then, because I got, we're going to have Professor James Small on in about 15 minutes or so for another we're doing another broadcast. But just for people who may just be tuning in for the last part and don't understand what you're saying. Now, this is Dr. Leonard Jeffries, he's a brilliant historian, one of my teachers, Grandmaster Scholar Warrior. You've seen him in the Hidden Colors 5 documentary just came out from director Tariq Nasheed, the documentary 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti. He's the former chair of the Black Studies Department at City.
Founder and chair,
and also a co-founder of ASCAC, Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations as well. But he worked with Alex Haley, who wrote Roots. He worked with Alex Haley for 7 years. Right. And he's talking about how when they made the Roots documentary, because Alex Haley didn't make the miniseries. Alex Haley didn't make the miniseries. You had white people who bought the rights to Roots to make the miniseries. So I'm not knocking Alex Haley. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But Dr. Jeffries, who's a historian, he's talking about being on the set of the making of Roots, and he is correcting the history of what's being projected, and the white people who are in control don't want him to correct the history. Is that correct, Dr. Jeffries?
Right. They felt so. Alex is saying, wait a minute, we got to talk to the expert.
Yeah, so, you the expert, you.
That's right. They were so tired of me making corrections. For one thing, there was a village, Atonde village. Black people from New York moved down to South Carolina, and they set up an African traditional village with Brother Surgeman as the leader. And these were
Is that the Gullah? Are you talking about the Gullah, or are you talking about somebody else?
No, these are black people who moved with Baba Surgiman
Oh, okay.
A traditional African village,
Okay.
and in the compounds, etc., and it was in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were the seconds. I mean, they were hired. And then the white folks said, well, no, we don't need them here because there's some light ones with it. And this one, I said, wait a minute.
Some light ones, light-skinned ones like me?
Light-skinned ones, yes. They were saying, no, that they could. I said, no. That area of Africa is the mountains. And so you do have, near that whole Manding country, you have brown people. They call them the Tukula, all colors, or the Fula. So I was explaining that these people with their various color shades were legitimate Africans. And that kind of hurt them because they wanted a victory over me, but they wasn't going to get none in Ohio. This Negro got to go. He got his thing as too. But then I couldn't abandon Alex. But then Spirit told me, in the funk that I was in, go to your grandfather's grave. Mm-hmm. And so I'm saying, well, wait a minute. Grandfather's grave. I know that my mother's father, my grandfather on that side, was born in Virginia, and I was born on his birthday, January 19th, 1938. He was born January 19th, 1888. But I don't know nothing about my father's father. And so I said, well, let me call Aunt Bessie, his sister that raised him. And I said, Aunt Bessie, up in Newark, New Jersey, where's your father? Where's my grandfather? And where do we come from? She said, well, we come from Ohio. I said, Aunt Bessie, ain't nobody come from Ohio. We migrated out of Georgia to Ohio. Where in Georgia is your father, my grandfather? She got my drift, and she said, your grandfather and my father is buried in Midway Church Cemetery, Jasper County, Kelly, Georgia. And with that information, my life was transformed. I stayed for a couple of days with Alex because I was his partner, but I had to get out of there. And so I rented a car, and after I flew up to Atlanta, and with the idea of going down to Kelly, Georgia, near Monticello. And I had never been to rural Georgia.
Thomas Jefferson's plantation, Monticello, yes.
Monticello, and that's the name of one of the key towns in Georgia. Mm-hmm. And so it was dark. And I went into the church. I found it finally. I went into the church, and above the church on the hill was a lot of activity. I didn't know what that was, but my role was to go into that damn cemetery. It was getting dark. I turned the lights of the car on, and then I got the courage to go into the cemetery in rural Georgia by myself at night in a graveyard. But that changed my life because when I got into that graveyard, I had a stick, but I'm a city boy. I had a stick for snakes. And stupid fool, I ain't gonna do nothing with no snakes. I should have been worried about the ticks if I understood what was happening. But they gave me a little security. I had my flashlight and my stick. And then I saw his tomb, the tallest tomb in the graveyard. And it was a Tekken. Yes. And it was up to my chest. And on it were his vital statistics. Jesse Jeffries, born in 1868 and died in 1917, July the 14th. But the thing that blew my mind was this Tekken had the twin pillars of masonry on it. He was the head of the Masonic Lodge. They eventually burned down the Masonic Lodge. So that picture that you put there, I'm in tears of joy because that was my experience, that I swore that I would fight like hell for our history no matter what. Nobody was going to turn me around. And that imagery which you just created, I'm going to take it and then put both of those and put my grandfather's tombstone in the middle of it. So I ain't even going to ask you permission. I'm just doing like an African.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, well, that's it. The Jesse Jeffries story is unbelievable. He was a leader of the community, and he wasn't killed because he was shiftless. He was doing too much. And there was an attempt to put in place a new Klan terror.
Right.
After the Birth of the Nation movement in 1915. So we're on a victorious path, and we have to stay on it.
Well, very quickly, Doc, I'm gonna let you go here because we got Professor Jack. I got to get ready for Professor James Small also. How can people get in contact with you if they want to bring you in for a lecture or something like that? How can people get in contact, and how can they order your DVDs, etc.?
Well, we have the DVDs and we have the publications.
Mm.
Somebody printed a book with my name on it, nice picture on the cover, and it wasn't me, but it was just part of a previous publication that somebody did without my approval.
Mm.
So we do have those. Since they put it out there, I'm gonna be selling them. We have all the tapes. But the best thing is you have telephones. They have the old telephone like this, and then they have the later telephones like that.
Smartphone.
So this number here is the landline, 201-837-1355.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'll answer this if I'm near it, but it has 500 messages on it. 300 of them I want to keep, so I got to do something with this. This one you always can get me, and that's 201-668-7973. Again, 201-668-7973. So we'll be glad to have a chat on the phone or invitation to your organizations or activities.
Email address, do you want people to email you?
Email, if you want to email, it's ljeffries@allholdings.com. Jeffries, Jeffries, at All Holdings, one word, AllHoldings.com.
All right. Well, look, Dr. Jeffries, it's always great talking to you. We always learn.
Of the day, anytime. I have to be prepared for calls that come in from Africa. So they come in the middle of the night. And so don't hesitate. People say, are you serious, Dr. Jeffries? I say, yes, my best time is after midnight.
Right.
Power to our peoples. Black power, the Akon power, and the Wakanda power. But
absolutely.
As far as I did a Wakanda, Wakanda should say, we should say Kemetic power.
Kemetic power. Wakanda Pharaoh is always right over left also, so everybody knows. It's always right over left. That comes from the Subiti, from the pharaohs, the position of the pharaohs. All right, Doc.
You take care. Have a great day. You done made my day. And I'll send you the bill.
Okay.
When we get our reparations, you can just write me a nice little check.
Okay, I will, brother. All right, we'll have you back on soon, okay?
All right, now.
Thank Jeffries. You. Take care.
To our people.
All right, brother. Peace.
Peace.
All right, everybody. That was Dr. Leonard Jeffries, one of our great Grandmaster Scholar Warriors, one of my teachers. We'll be back shortly with Professor James Small. So a little after 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll have Professor James Small. Around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll have Professor Kabahai Watakamene, formerly known as Booker T. Coleman. You've seen him in the Hidden Colors documentary. You've seen him in the documentary 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti, from director Tariq Nasheed. Professor Kaba, Professor James Small, and myself were all in the third installment of Elementary Genocide from director Raheem Shabazz. And Professor Kaba and myself, we are in the Black Friday documentaries from director Rick Mathis, okay? And then about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be joined by Dr. David Imhotep, live, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. This book here, we'll have, this evening, we'll be joined by Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, okay? Very quickly, because we're going to start a new broadcast for Professor James Small after contact and get that going. We started a little late with Dr. Leonard Jeffries. If you like this type of information, you can, number one, donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. That helps us to keep doing the research. That helps us to broadcast our Sunday night show, the African History Network show. That helps when I have to pay to travel to different events and expenses, etc. And it helps us to pay the bills, stay on the air, okay? paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, africanhistorynetwork.com, okay? Also, all of my DVD lectures are at our website, africanhistorynetwork.com. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show, creator and owner of this Facebook fan page that we're on, also the African History Network. I teach online courses. We have a new one just started up, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, which is our Holocaust, the transatlantic slave trade. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is an 8-week, 16-hour online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history. We deal with this history chronologically. So if you like this conversation that we had today, if you learned a lot, you definitely want to register for this online course. This section meets on Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay? All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. So as soon as you register, you can watch class number 1. And then also there is about 36 hours of bonus content. So the course is regularly $130. It's on sale $80. And we deal with thousands of years of history, and we also deal with the African presence in this country going back tens of thousands of years as well, because our history does not start in slavery. So we'll post a link here once again to register for the online course. And there's content that you can watch right now. So as soon as you register, you can watch class number 1, okay, that we did last Thursday, and you'll be ready for class 2. Also, we have Hidden Colors 5 available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. For each copy of Hidden Colors 5 you purchase, you'll get 3 digital download presentations from me automatically. That's free. And that also includes 6 principles of political self-defense, how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. Okay, that's one of my latest presentations. I did that in July of 2019. And for those in the Brooklyn area, I will be in Brooklyn this weekend, Friday, August 23rd at Sister's Place, 456 Nordstrom Avenue, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And Saturday, August 24th at Makata, the Makata Museum, 80 Hanson Place, Brooklyn, New York. This is for the Black Agenda on Tour. The Black Agenda on Tour, Michi X, Jice Johnson, Jade Arundel, Michael Imhotep, young activists. So visit the web. We have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also at the Black Agenda on Tour, the Black Agenda on Tour.com as well. Okay. And I'll be there. I'll be speaking there also, dealing with 6 principles of political self-defense. Then we'll post this information. Use promo code Brooklyn to get $15 off the tickets. Okay. All right, and then African American business owners, email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Okay, guys, we have to get out of here briefly. I have to get ready for Professor James Small. We're commemorating August 20th, 1619, 400th year anniversary of 29 Africans coming into Virginia, Point Comfort. But African people have been in this land going back at least 51,700 years. And I know we'll deal with that with Professor Kaba as well as Dr. David Imhotep also. So when we discuss the transatlantic slave trade, we have to understand that African people are the original people of North, Central, and South America, and that our history does not start in this land in slavery. We can't start studying in the 1440s when the Portuguese get involved, or in 1619, okay? We have to understand hundreds and thousands of years of history that lead up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And what's crucial to understand is the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who take the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt into Europe, take the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Europe, and this brings Europe out of the Dark Ages, okay? So be sure to register for my online course, and it's also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, where we get deeper to that information. All right, look, hey, I have to get out of here. Remember, right now is correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever, and we'll talk to you next time. Peace.